Neither does the spend that we're spending.
Question number 6, Andrew Bailey.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Justice. What recent announcements has she made regarding Phase 2 of the anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism regime?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Amy Adams.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I introduced legislation into Parliament to bring lawyers, conveyancers, accountants, real estate agents and sports and racing betting into the anti-money laundering regime after the government fast-tracked implementation last year. Additionally, businesses that deal in certain high-value goods, including motor vehicles, jewellery and art, will also be covered under the Act when they accept large cash transactions. Following the release of the exposure draft late last year in consultation with affected sectors, the bill aims to strike the right balance between combating crime, minimising the cost of compliance and protecting our international reputation.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question, Andrew Bailey.
How will the proposed Phase 2 regime impact New Zealanders?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Amy Adams.
Mr. Speaker, once in place, the new regime will affect both the sectors covered and the New Zealanders who interact with them. For example, when people are buying or selling property, setting up trusts, buying cars, boats, art or jewellery with large amounts of cash, or, for example, having an accountant manage funds for them, they will need to provide proof of identification and address. In some cases, they may also need to provide information about the source of the funds and beneficial ownership. The affected sectors will also need full risk assessment and compliance programs and will be obliged to report suspicious activities. While this will mean extra cost, the new regime is seen as an essential tool in the fight against money laundering and terrorist financing.
Question number 7.